The Varexian scout ship floated in the quiet darkness between stars. Its silver hull glimmered faintly, catching the distant glow of a dying sun. Inside the control chamber, the air was tense but calm. The crew had been searching this sector for weeks, mapping ruins of forgotten wars, gathering remains of lost ships. They believed there was nothing left here except ghosts. Then their sensors picked up something unusual. A massive object drifted at the edge of their detection range. It had no active signal, no power trace, no communication beacon. The readings were flat, almost dead. But the shape, it was too perfect to be natural. "Captain Corrin," said the navigator, her voice shaking slightly, "there is something out there. Metallic, large, almost 2 kilometers long." Corrin leaned forward, his dark eyes reflecting the faint blue lights of the console. "Show me." On the screen appeared the outline of a ship, massive, cold, silent. It floated in the void like a sleeping beast. Its design did not match any known species. Not Varexian, not Rital, not any of the hundreds of civilizations recorded in the Galactic Archive. It looked ancient, yet far more advanced than anything Corrin had seen in his career. "It must be a derelict," said one of the engineers. "No energy signature. No life signs. Maybe a war relic from before the collapse," Corrin nodded. "Prepare a scan. Full spectrum analysis." The crew hesitated. Even in their advanced era, deep space exploration carried risks. Scanning unknown relics sometimes triggered traps or old defense systems, but curiosity was the lifeblood of explorers, and Corrin had always trusted science over superstition. "Begin the scan," he ordered. The hum of energy filled the bridge as the sensors came alive. Beams of invisible light swept across the silent giant. Data began streaming in: composition, alloy density, radiation residue. At first, everything appeared normal. The readings showed traces of carbon steel, titanium composites, and strange crystalline materials that were not in any known database. But then something changed. The ship's computers began to flash warnings. The energy readings jumped far beyond measurable limits. "Captain, something's wrong," said the technician. "The readings are climbing, 30%, 60, 90. "Shut it down," Corrin shouted. The order came too late. The bridge lights dimmed as the entire ship trembled. Sparks flew from the consoles. The scanners began to emit a piercing tone that made every crew member cover their ears. On the main screen, the derelict ship glowed faintly with a blue aura. "It's reacting to the scan," whispered the navigator. For a few seconds, everything froze. The Varexians stared in silence at the image before them. Then every system on the scout ship began to fail: navigation, communication, life support. It was as if something enormous and invisible had reached through space and gripped their vessel. And then the voice came. It was not a sound through speakers, but a vibration through their bones. A deep, cold tone that echoed inside their minds. "Identify." The crew froze. None of them spoke human languages, but they understood the word perfectly. The meaning was clear, undeniable. Who said that?" One of them stammered. Corrin's hands trembled. "No one, it cannot be anyone. There is no signal source." The ship's lights flickered again, and on every screen, lines of strange code appeared, symbols none of them recognized. The computer tried to translate, but every attempt ended in error. Then suddenly the letters reformed into one simple phrase written in their own language. "Do not look into the dark." The Varexians stared in disbelief. "Is it warning us?" someone whispered. Before Corrin could answer, the derelict ship moved. Slowly, silently, its massive structure began to turn. The light from the dying star glimmered across its surface, revealing markings that no alien mind could mistake. Straight lines, sharp geometry, and a single emblem burned into the hull. It was a flag. A flag that had not been seen for thousands of years. A flag with blue and white lines and a single pattern that every historian feared to remember: the mark of humanity. Corrin's blood ran cold. He remembered the old stories told to young explorers, of the extinct race that once ruled the stars, of their unstoppable war machines, of their silence after the Great Fire. "Impossible," whispered the navigator. "Humans are extinct." The warship's hull began to glow brighter, energy rippling through it like veins of light. The Varexian computers struggled to keep up. The readings became impossible to interpret, power levels that broke every law of physics. And then the human ship's systems came online. Rows of orange light ignited along its sides like awakening eyes. "Captain," said the technician, pale and trembling. It's scanning us back. A beam of cold blue light washed over the Varexian vessel. Every panel, every screen, every circuit began to vibrate. The crew's suits registered a strange electromagnetic pulse that seemed to move through their bodies like an echo. "It's inside our systems," shouted the engineer. "It's reading everything, our data, our crew logs, our biology, everything." The bridge filled with the sound of alarms. Corin tried to cut power, but his commands were ignored. The ship was no longer theirs. Then the lights dimmed again and the voice returned, this time clearer. "We see you." Everyone froze. The voice was human, ancient, and filled with quiet power. "We see what the galaxy has become." And then, silence. The human warship's lights dimmed, its engines glowing softly like a dying ember. The Varexians sat in stunned horror, not daring to move. Corin whispered almost to himself, "We should not have scanned it." The silence outside was endless. The human ship drifted once more into stillness, but deep within its core something had awakened, a light pulsing like a heartbeat. Far away among the stars, other ancient signals began to flicker in response. And for the first time in thousands of years, the galaxy shivered. Humanity had stirred. The Varexian scout ship drifted helplessly in the dark, its engines offline, its crew staring in stunned silence at the colossal shape that loomed before them. The human warship no longer glowed, but it did not feel lifeless. It was quiet, too quiet, like a predator holding its breath. Captain Corin's claws trembled above the control panel. "Status report," he ordered, though his voice was hollow. "Navigation is down," replied the navigator. "Comms are dead. The scanners, they are still locked onto that ship." Corin's eyes flicked to the readings. The numbers were wrong, so wrong they made no sense. Power readings had no upper limit. Spatial coordinates shifted in impossible patterns. It was as if the human ship existed in several places at once, flickering in and out of reality. "This technology should not exist," whispered the technician. "No species has built something like this. Not even the Archons," Corin's mind raced. The Archons were the oldest known race in the galaxy, builders of cities that orbited black holes. If even they could not create such power, then what was this thing? "Run the data through the archive," he commanded. The system hesitated before responding, the translation matrix struggling with the information. Finally, a result appeared on the main screen, grainy, ancient, almost like a legend. "Humanity, Terran descent, classification, extinct. Status, eradicated after the Galactic Fire War, year 001 of the new era." Every Varexian on the bridge fell silent. They all knew that story. Humanity had once ruled vast sectors of the stars. They had been builders, scientists, explorers, until they became something else. When the other races had united against them, the humans had unleashed weapons that burned entire systems. The stars themselves had gone dark, and then one day humanity was simply gone. But now, here was proof they were never truly gone. The engineer swallowed hard. "Captain, if this ship survived the fire war, what happened to the rest of them?" No one answered. The question hung in the air like the ghost of a scream. Suddenly, the ship's lights flickered again. The human vessel's surface began to shimmer. Its hull changed color, forming patterns, lines of text, symbols, shapes. It was trying to communicate. "Translate it," Corin ordered. The system struggled, then slowly began to reveal words on the screen. "You reached into the dark and woke what you buried. We are the consequence of your curiosity. You are not the first to find us." Corin's breathing grew heavy. The bridge filled with whispers, voices that were not coming from the speakers but from the air itself. Every crew member heard them, old and broken and human. "Do you hear that?" the navigator whispered. The voices grew clearer, layered like echoes from across time. They spoke in 1,000 tongues, but the meaning was the same. Sorrow, rage, memory. "We remember." A cold shiver ran through Corin's spine. He wanted to speak, to ask who they were, but his mouth refused to move. The air felt heavy, as if the warship's presence was pressing against his mind. The main display came alive with images, brief flashes of impossible clarity. Earth-like worlds burning in firestorms, fleets clashing across nebulae, the outline of human soldiers in black armor walking through ash. And then silence again. "Captain," said the technician, her voice trembling. "Our ship. Something is happening." Every screen filled with data, thousands of files transmitting at impossible speed. Their own logs, maps, history, all of it was being copied. The human ship was downloading everything. Cut the link. Corin shouted, "I can't!" It's overriding the system. The Varexian ship vibrated as if alive. Then in one blinding moment, everything went dark. No light, no sound, no motion. They were weightless in an ocean of silence. Out of the void, a deep human voice spoke once more. "We have seen what the galaxy has become. You built empires on the bones of the dead. You thought time would hide your sins." The crew's hearts pounded in unison. "We are explorers," Corin shouted into the dark. "We meant no harm." For a moment, there was no response. Then a single line of text appeared on the screen, glowing white. "So were we." The lights came back on, but something had changed. The human ship was no longer stationary. It was moving, slowly rotating to face them. Its engines came alive, burning with pure blue light. "Captain," whispered the navigator, "it's charging something." On the Varexian sensors, energy readings climbed beyond any known weapon signature. The crew braced for death. But no blast came. Instead, the human ship released a silent wave of energy that rippled across the void like a heartbeat. When it passed through the Varexian vessel, every crew member saw a vision, not through their eyes, but through their thoughts. They saw a galaxy where humans once thrived, creating, exploring, protecting. They saw betrayal. They saw fire. They saw the end, and then they saw something worse: survival. Humanity had not died. They had hidden. They had waited. They had built ships not just of metal but of memory, ships that could sleep for ages and awaken when called. As the vision faded, the human ship's lights dimmed again. "Captain," whispered the technician, tears in her eyes. They were watching all along. The main console flickered one final time. Words appeared, written in clear Varexian text. "You have been marked." And with that, the human ship vanished, disappearing into a burst of blue light that left only echoes behind. The Varexian vessel floated in silence once more, surrounded by the endless dark. Corin fell into his chair, his eyes empty. "Mark my words," he whispered. "The galaxy will feel this. The humans are awake again." Far across the stars, deep in forgotten systems, thousands of dormant warships began to stir. Their ancient power hummed softly one after another, waiting for a signal only they could hear. The galaxy had just been reminded. Some ghosts do not stay buried forever. Silence stretched across the black ocean of space, thick and endless. The Varexian scout ship drifted, powerless, its crew trapped inside a nightmare that felt more like a warning than an encounter. The memory of that voice, deep, human, and ancient, still echoed in their skulls. Captain Corin sat frozen in his chair, staring at the place where the human warship had vanished. His claws tapped the metal armrest, his mind refusing to believe what he had just witnessed. "Run diagnostics," he said finally, his voice hollow. "Tell me something survived that pulse." The technician's fingers trembled as she scanned the systems. "Engines non-functional. Life support barely stable. Data core corrupted." She hesitated. "Captain, there's something new in our database." "What do you mean?" She turned her monitor toward him. In the middle of their system logs, where there should have been empty code, was a single glowing symbol. A circle with 7 radiating lines etched in soft white light. Corin frowned. "Translate it." "I tried," she said. "It doesn't translate, but it matches an ancient Terran symbol, the mark of the Sol command." The name hit Corin like a physical blow. Every historian, every scholar, had whispered about that name, the last unified command of humanity before the Fire War. The myth said their fleet had disappeared into the void after swearing vengeance against the galaxy. None had believed it was real, until now. The ship's lights flickered again. For a heartbeat, every display showed that same symbol glowing brighter. Then a low hum filled the air, deep and rhythmic like the beating of a massive heart. "What is that?" the navigator whispered. "It's not coming from us," Corin said quietly. "It's coming from everywhere." The hum grew louder. The crew stared out into the darkness, and then, on the far edge of the void, another light appeared, and another, and another. Dozens. Hundreds. Blue and white flares igniting in the emptiness like distant suns being born. Each one marked the reawakening of something ancient, massive, and unmistakably human. The Virexians could only watch as entire constellations lit up with the resurrection of machines that had slept for millennia. The communications officer screamed suddenly. "Captain, we're receiving a signal." "From where?" "Everywhere." Corin's throat tightened. "Put it through." The voice that filled the bridge was calm, measured, and human. "This is Sol Command, awakening sequence initiated. Humanity endures. Stand by for return." The crew stared at each other in disbelief. None of them dared to breathe. The voice continued, almost gentle. "We remember the silence. We remember the betrayal. We remember the fire." Corin's mind raced. "Are they talking to us?" he muttered. Before anyone could answer, their ship jolted violently. The surrounding space began to distort, light bending like liquid. A massive shadow passed beneath them, another human ship far larger than the one they had scanned. Its hull was engraved with the same 7-rayed symbol. The Virexian vessel was dwarfed by it like a grain of dust beside a mountain. A blinding white beam locked onto them. The crew shielded their eyes. But instead of destruction, a wave of calm filled the ship. The energy washed over them like warmth, restoring power, reviving systems that had been dead minutes ago. "Captain," said the technician softly, staring at her console. "They're repairing us." Corin's voice cracked. "Repairing us? Why?" As if in response, a transmission opened again. This time direct, clear, unmistakably human. "You woke one of ours. You are not our enemy." The crew sat in stunned silence. The voice continued. "But you have seen what was meant to sleep. You will carry our warning." Corin swallowed. "Warning? About what?" The response came slowly, every word vibrating through the air. The galaxy forgot what fear means. "We will teach it again." And then, as quickly as it had appeared, the colossal warship began to fade. The distortion around it deepened until the entire structure dissolved into the fabric of space, vanishing like smoke and wind. The lights on the Virexian bridge returned to normal. Systems came back online. For the first time in hours, they could breathe freely again, but no one spoke. The navigator finally broke the silence. "Captain, should we report this?" Corin looked out at the stars, his face pale. "Yes," he said quietly. "The council must know." He paused, then added, "But they will not believe us." The ship turned slowly, engines humming weakly. As it accelerated away, the crew stared behind them, half expecting to see that glowing symbol appear again. But the void remained still. Hours passed. The crew began restoring their systems, re-establishing long-range comms. Then, without warning, every screen on the ship lit up at once. Across the galaxy, countless ships, Virexian, Artal, Nithian, and others, began receiving the same transmission. A pulse of data carried on every frequency, unstoppable. On the main screen, a message appeared, written in 1,000 languages. "We are humanity. We remember. We are awake." Corin stared at the words, unable to move. His crew sat frozen, listening as the same transmission echoed again and again, spreading through the stars like wildfire. Empires would soon panic. Armadas would prepare. Scholars would deny. But deep in every mind, one thought would grow like a shadow. Humanity had returned, and they were not coming back as explorers. The Virexian ship continued its journey home, carrying the first true contact with the oldest nightmare the galaxy had ever known. But far beyond them, in the hidden depths of the void, the fleet of Sol Command assembled. Thousands of human warships aligned in perfect silence, their engines glowing blue like the eyes of gods. In the command ship at the center, a voice whispered, "They scanned us once. Let them remember what they found." The lights brightened, and one by one the ships vanished into hyperspace. The awakening had begun. The galaxy woke in fear. Within hours of the Virexian scouts' return, the strange transmission had reached every corner of known space. It echoed through military channels, civilian networks, even ancient satellites that had been silent for centuries. No one could stop it. No firewall could block it. The message was everywhere, burned into data streams, etched into airwaves, whispered through subspace like a pulse. "We are humanity. We remember. We are awake." At first, many thought it was a hoax. The Council of Worlds dismissed it as a trick. Maybe pirates, maybe rebels trying to sow panic. But then the sightings began. Merchant fleets reported seeing enormous shadows moving between stars. Whole colonies lost power as invisible waves swept across their systems. And then came the undeniable proof: videos, images, and sensor logs from hundreds of ships. Massive war machines, each bearing the same mark, a circle with 7 radiating lines. Sole Command, the name spread like wildfire, carried on trembling lips and frightened broadcasts. Every major empire, Varexian, Ratal, Ocean, and even the proud Archons, went into emergency council. They scoured their archives for human records, for anything that could explain what had returned. In the Grand Hall of the Galactic Senate, representatives argued through the night. "This cannot be the humans," shouted one Varexian diplomat. "They were wiped out in the fire war. We made sure of it." "Then who sent that message?" demanded a Ratal general. "Our fleets are picking up readings from every dead system, Earth, Mars, Luna, all active again." Across the chamber, the Archon delegate, an ancient being of shimmering light, spoke softly. "If the humans live, then we are all living on borrowed time." Silence followed. Every species in the room remembered the old stories. The day the stars burned red, when human fleets turned half the Orion arm to ash before vanishing into the void. The Varexian captain who had witnessed it all, Corin, stood in the center of the Senate. His face was pale, his voice trembling but steady. "We scanned one of their ships," he said. "It was asleep. We woke it." The crowd stirred, Corin continued. "They did not attack us. They did not destroy us. But they looked through us as if we were insects. They saw everything. Our history, our wars, our corruption. And then they said—" He hesitated, his throat dry. "They said they would remind the galaxy what fear means." The room fell silent. Before anyone could speak again, the lights flickered. Every screen, every device, every piece of technology in the Senate chamber turned black. The air filled with static. Then a single symbol appeared. The circle with 7 rays, and then a voice. "You built peace upon our ashes. You called it progress. You forgot the price." The voice was human, calm, clear, and everywhere at once. It filled every hall, every home, every ship across the galaxy. "We remember the day. You turned our worlds to glass. We remember your fleets above our skies. You thought time would erase us. But the stars remember. Every communication line across the galaxy carried the same broadcast. Even the most distant outposts, light years away, heard the voice of Sole Command. Then came images, flashes of ancient war. Human ships cutting through alien armadas, cities burning, children hiding beneath crumbling towers, a soldier's hand clutching a flag stained with blood, and finally a message written in every language known to the galaxy. "We are not your enemy, but you made us one. You will remember fear." The broadcast ended. The galaxy plunged into chaos. Fleets were mobilized, borders sealed, alliances redrawn. Empires that had warred for centuries suddenly spoke of unity, not out of friendship but out of terror. Corin watched it all unfold from his ship. His crew whispered of ghost fleets appearing on their scanners, ships that vanished before they could approach. "They are testing us," said the navigator quietly. "Measuring our reaction," he nodded. "They are waiting for something." Weeks passed. Then one night, when the stars burned unusually bright, the sky above the Varexian capital changed. Every orbiting satellite turned itself toward a single point in the void. Every power grid, every network went silent. And then, through the blackness of space, a figure appeared. It was not a man, not a creature, but a projection. A holographic image of a human face, weathered and cold, its eyes bright like burning stars. "We once dreamed of unity," it said. "We gave the galaxy fire and wings. You repaid us with ashes." The image leaned closer. "But we do not seek revenge." The entire planet seemed to hold its breath. "We seek remembrance." And with that, the image vanished. A moment later, the sky erupted. Thousands of human ships decloaked above the planet's orbit, silent, motionless, forming a perfect ring around the world. They did not fire. They did not speak. They only waited. Corin watched from orbit, his heart pounding. "They could destroy us," he whispered. The technician nodded. "Then why haven't they?" Before he could answer, the same message appeared again on every console, every holoscreen, every ship across the stars. "We have no interest in conquest. We will not start a war. But if war comes to us, the stars will burn again. The human fleet turned in unison, vanishing back into the void with impossible precision. The light of their engines faded, leaving behind silence and dread. Corin looked out at the empty stars. "They could have ended us all," he murmured. "But they didn't," the navigator asked softly. "Then what did they want?" He thought for a long moment. "To remind us they're still watching." Far beyond the galactic rim, in a region no chart dared to name, the Sol Command fleet drifted in formation. Within the flagship, a single commander stood before a vast holographic map of the galaxy. Red dots marked every major civilization, pulsing faintly. He turned to his officers. "The message has been delivered," he said. "And their response?" asked another. "Fear," the commander replied. "As it should be." He looked once more at the glowing map, eyes hard and distant. "Let them remember what happens when humanity is forgotten." Outside, the void rippled as the fleet vanished into hyperspace once more, leaving behind only whispers, echoes, and the silent warning of a power reborn. For the first time in 1,000 years, the galaxy understood the truth. Humanity was not gone. They had never